after that happened, did have to go outside with him and wipe the tears away. That was
Uh,
that was hard. That was hard. And I looked at first I thought I just don't know if I can do this, if this is what it's going to be like. But like I said, going on the way home, and I started thinking, he knew what that child needed. He was able to give that child some comfort in a way that no one else could, and that's what it's all about.
This podcast is dedicated to the celebration and preservation of the working Australian Shepherd. Your Aussie is descended from a proud and amazing lineage of hard-working ranch dogs, identified and cultivated primarily in the Wild West. Contrary to the breed name, the Australian Shepherd is actually an American breed success story. Only in America can a blue-eyed, scruffy dog rise from the dust of the American ranch to become one of the most popular breeds in the world today. The Aussie's beauty, brains, and incredible work ethic and almost empathic connection with their human charges make them unforgettable and pivotal members of the family. My goal is to help you understand this amazing breed, learn more about their heritage and their physical and mental needs so that together we can preserve the working Aussie by encouraging better breeding and better vetting of future Aussie owners, ultimately keeping Aussies with their families and out of shelters. Welcome to the Instinctive Australian Shepherd.
Welcome back to the Instinctive Australian Shepherd podcast. This is Jacque Tinker. I have an exciting guest today, Brad Hawkins from Pembroke, Kentucky. Welcome, Brad, to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
I met Brad through a friend of mine who bought one of his puppies, a really nice dog, nice working dog. Brad raises working Australian Shepherds, and his lines, he'll talk to you a little bit about that too. So let's first of all, one of the things that I want to talk to Brad, he does some really exciting things with his dogs. He takes his dogs to various locations and does therapy work with him. And he's very into the therapy work, and it's a very big deal in his life. But I want to first start out with, how did you get into Australian Shepherds?
Several years ago, I started my career as an ag teacher, a high school ag teacher. I was in the classroom for about 21 years, and I had a student come in one day. His aunt had apparently rescued a litter of Australian Shepherd puppies that were about to be put down because I guess the owner, the breeder, was unable to sell them. And so the aunt went and rescued him, and he asked me, "Can you help me find some homes?" And I said, "Well, sure, I'll ask around and see who might be interested." The next day, I get to school, and there is a puppy sitting in front of my classroom door that he had brought in, and pretty little dog. And at the time, I actually had Shelties and wasn't really interested in getting into a different breed. And so I found a home for her. And a few days later, I get back to school, and sure enough, there's another puppy sitting in front of my classroom. And this was a blue merle. So I ended up taking it home. I thought, okay, I'll find a home for it. And she was probably about 9, 10 weeks old at the time. And she was the smartest, most playful, inquisitive pup I'd ever seen, and quickly fell for her. And I thought, well, she's going to be staying here with me. Started training, doing a lot of obedience with her, was doing agility at the time. Started taking her when she was old enough, started taking her to trials, and just from there kind of fell in love with the breed. I didn't know a lot about the herding at that time, but my neighbor had cows and quickly found out she loved to herd
Mhm.
in addition to the agility. And he was constantly calling me saying, "Brad, you need to come get your dog. She's got my cows pinned up in the corner and won't let them out to graze or whatever." And at the time, like I said, I didn't know a lot about herding, and I wish I did, because I think she would have excelled at that as well as she did with agility. But just kind of fell in love with the breed from there, and it just kept growing. And I've had Aussies now for a little over 20 years, I guess.
Well, first of all, that was one smart kid. You
Yes.
putting a puppy in front of your door. That's very sneaky. And it's crazy how they kind of take over and they decide, they pick you and somehow get in your heart. And I don't know. It's hard to get another breed after you've had an Aussie, I think anyway. So
It is. So I'm just strictly Aussie now, and that's what I focus on.
yeah. So how about the therapy dog thing? How did that start?
Well, of course, being an ag teacher, I was always bringing in animals for demonstrations. We had rabbits out in the greenhouse, and I was always bringing in my dogs, pups, and so forth. And again, using them as demonstrations. So I saw firsthand how animals can help calm people who may be upset, students who may have suffered with ADHD, anger issues, whatever. You would see a real transition with them when they were working with an animal, holding a rabbit or a puppy or whatever in their lap and petting on it. They would, become very calm, very relaxed, more focused. So I knew benefits of animal therapy from that. And then about 5 or 6 years ago, I saw a post, I believe it was on Facebook, for a therapy dog workshop that was being conducted in our area. And I thought, that could be a good thing. And I had at the time, one of my dogs, Bannock, he was a couple of years old, I guess, at the time, 2 or 3 years old. And he had been through a lot of obedience, and I'd done a little bit of agility with him and some herding and various things. And just a calm, kind of well-rounded, mentally stable type dog. And I thought, he might be good for this line of work.
Mm-hmm.
And, quite honestly, it was also a marketing strategy to kind of show the versatility of my dogs if I could get him certified as a therapy dog. So I went to the workshop. It was for the handlers. They kind of went over the rules and regulations of this particular organization. We did a lot of role playing on various scenarios that you might encounter on a therapy dog visit. Went through that, became more interested, and then went back a few weeks later for the evaluation portion of it. And, Bannock thankfully came through it with flying colors. Some organizations have different levels of rating that kind of tell you what type of environments and situations you can visit in. And he came out with a complex rating, which means that we can pretty much go anywhere that allows therapy dogs, from schools to hospitals to, nursing homes, whatever the case is. From there, I got a call one day asking me, shortly after we had been evaluated, asking me if we would go to a camp that we have here in our area for children with serious illnesses that, require special medical care and supervision. And so they wouldn't be able to attend regular camp. So I agreed. We're going to try this. It'll be our maiden voyage here. And there were probably 4 or 5 other teams that went with us as well. And I remember we got there and there was this big, large building, kind of like a warehouse, big open style building. And we go in the door and it was like a rock concert going on in there. There was this big stage, giant speakers, music blaring, flashing lights, smoke machines, the whole 9 yards. And all the campers and counselors were sitting on the floor in front of the stage in this giant circle. And we walked out into the middle of it, and they handed us a microphone, and we had to introduce ourselves and talk about our dogs and so forth. And then we would walk around the circle and let everyone pet the dogs and ask us questions, whatever. And needless to say, with all the noise and lights and commotion, he was nervous. Bannock was kind of nervous, and he did his job. He stayed kind of steady. He stayed glued to my leg. He walked around the circle with me, and he let everyone pet him and so forth. And so we get about 3/4 away around the circle, and we're coming back toward the stage. And I see the exit door, and I thought, I'm just going to step out for a minute, give him a break, let him calm down a little bit, and we'll come back in. And for whatever reason, as we headed toward the door, for the first time since we'd been there, he pulled off my leg and literally pulled me to this little boy that was sitting in front of the stage. Okay. Sitting right there where all the lights and noise and smoke machines and everything were that were kind of scaring him. And he walks up to this little boy, probably, I'm going to guess 8 or 9 years old, and just starts licking this little boy.
Mm.
First time he had done that to anyone there. And the little boy hugged him and looked up and said, "Thank you for coming. Now I can say I was kissed by a dog before I die."
Oh.
And it absolutely broke my heart, to see
Yeah.
a young child like that talking about death. That just kind of shook me pretty good. And there for a little while, I thought, I just don't know if I can do things like this. That was heartbreaking to me. And I don't know what was wrong with the child. I've always prayed that the child recovered and got over what illness or whatever he had that was affecting him. But on the way home that day, it just, I'm playing this over in my mind. And, I started thinking, as scared as he was of everything that was going on in there, all the noise and the flashing lights and so forth, somehow he knew that child needed him.
Mm-hmm.
And he was willing to push his fears aside and go over to him and comfort him.
Yeah.
And from that day forward, I have just been sold. I have literally been sold on it. Just to see the joy that the animals can bring to someone's life there who may be confined to a nursing home or some type of situation like that. It's incredible, the power of healing and joy and all that a dog can bring to someone's life.
Just a few moments of your time made such a huge difference for one person. And the dogs, it's so amazing that they can do this. It baffles me every time, or puts me in awe, I should say, of this breed. And not to say other breeds can't do this as well, but our breed is special and they can read people, and they have a knowing about them that is unique. And I think once you really get into that knowing of these dogs, they are quite amazing. Not every Aussie or every dog can do therapy work. You have to have a dog, like you mentioned, I think you said stable personality. They have to have that stable personality, that ability to have calm about them, that ability to take things in stride, be very friendly with strangers. So, do you consider that when you're breeding your dogs? Do you consider, like, oh, I'm going to only make sure I breed to dogs that have that personality that could do therapy work and herding and the things that are important to me? Is that a consideration for you?
I do. And I think that's important for any breeder, to make sure your dogs are mentally stable and sound and well adjusted. And so that's what I focus on. And any dog that I raise, I try to maintain that level of stability with them. I try to socialize them as much as possible. I try to reassure them whenever they may not be confident about a situation. Yeah, I think that's important. One of the things I think is good about Aussies for this line of work, and the breed standard says that they're kind of reserved around strangers, not scared, but a little reserved. And I think that's important in therapy work, because I see a lot of people that will ask me, we'd like to get into therapy dog. Our dog is really friendly. It loves people. Yes, but your dog goes bounding in and wants to jump on everyone and lick them and so forth. And, where my Aussies, they go in, they're kind of calm and they kind of size up the situation and look around. They're not going to go bounding in and leaping on people and trying to jump up in their laps and so forth. They will just calmly walk over and let the person pet them, hug them, whatever. And that's important because, we do deal with a lot of young children or elderly who may have balance issues or mobility issues. And so those are things you have to keep in mind as well. Dogs that can stay calm in those kind of situations and not knock someone over.
Yes. And I'm glad you brought that up too, because I mentioned in the last podcast, and I've mentioned it many times before, about training our dogs and how important it is to train them. Just being friendly is not enough to be a therapy dog. They have to have
Right.
extremely good behavior. They have to be extremely good citizens, and they have to have a calmness about them. You can't, if you're going to a nursing home, for example, and people are in wheelchairs and the dog runs and jumps on them, they can hurt them physically by putting their feet on them,
Exactly.
by doing those things. So friendliness is not it. Friendliness is not end all be all, because a lot of times our dogs, when they're friendly, and I'm doing air quotes for those of you that are listening, are high adrenaline. They're in that high adrenaline state where they're not just friendly, they're obnoxious, they're pushy, they're showing these are bad behavior traits. And a lot of people think, oh, they're friendly with everybody, they should run up to
Right.
every dog or every person. No, they should not. And our breed standard does say
Right.
reserved with strangers. Now that just means they're not afraid of strangers, they're just not going to run up to strangers. And it means
Yeah.
strangers don't have any authority over them. It means, like when I'm doing herding lessons, most Aussies will not work for me right off the bat. I have to build a relationship with them before they work with me. And so the handlers are the most important person in their life. Those are the things that mean reserved with strangers. And then the training part of it is super important. You have to have a dog that's calm, that can be calm. If you look up a dictionary and you see the word calm, you're not going to see a young Aussie typically. They have a lot of energy. However, you have to start from the very beginning, teaching them to control their energy. They're allowed to have the energy and express it, but they have to learn to do it not a frenetic or frenzied way, right? You know the difference of a dog
Right.
has a stable mind. They're going to run around, they're going to have zoomies, they're going to run fast, they're going to play, but then they have the ability to calm themselves. And you can teach that to, I mean,
Exactly.
part of it's genetic. And that's why I ask you, as a breeder, it's super important to start having these conversations about our breed, or we're going to just, we've already lost control of some things. But, you know, it's some of it's genetic. I've seen that. And if I have a dog that produces anything strange like that, I don't ever do that cross again, because I don't want to have any strangeness out there. But some of it, a lot of it is training too, and getting these puppies and realizing they don't play 24/7. They have to have an on and off button. So, since I'm kind of talking about training, let's talk about some of the things that you guys do to train your therapy dogs, and what people need to do before they even start thinking about therapy dogs. What kind of things do they have to do?
Well, and again, going back to good socialization, take your dog out to as many different environments as possible. If they're nervous about it, calmly, as you mentioned, reassure them that it's okay. And again, it's just as important, as you mentioned, to play with your dog and exercise your dog, but it's just as important to just be able to sit on the couch
Hmm.
calmly with your dog beside you
Yes.
without them pestering you or chewing on your hands or wanting to play or whatever. The dog needs to learn how to relax and to calm itself. And that's an important part of
Hmm.
training for any dog, in my opinion, because, like you said, an overstimulated, frantic dog is going to be a disaster when you take them out places where there may be people with health issues, mobility issues, whatever the case is. So, socialization early is a huge factor in this. Obedience training, I recommend obedience training at an early age. Begin with the basics. And if you can join a class or a group or something that teaches things and tests for things like the Canine Good Citizen or something similar to that, that
Hmm.
is usually a good indicator. How they do on that CGC is probably a good indicator of how they would do in a therapy dog evaluation, because they're very similar. Just being able to walk calmly on a leash through a crowd around different things, wheelchairs, walkers, bicycles, young children screaming or whatever, is going to be a good indicator of how your dog would perform on a therapy dog evaluation. So the more obedience training that you can do, people say, well, is there some kind of magic formula or class or whatever we can take? No, it takes a lot of time, a lot of dedication, again, to making sure your dog is well rounded and well trained and able to perform in a variety of different environments That's the
Yeah,
key to it.
exactly. And I want to go back to the socialization thing because I think that that is a word that is, I don't like the word because it's been sort of contaminated to me because people think socialization is one thing when I don't know another word to use, but an introduction to the world, I guess. But that doesn't mean when you socialize to me, I don't, when I take my puppies out, my young dogs out, or dogs that haven't had a lot of experience that I may get in, I don't let them just run up to everything and run up to every
Right,
dog and run up to every person and touching noses with other dogs and all that kind of stuff. That's not socialization. That's bad behavior. That's bad
right,
manners. And with
yeah,
Aussies, especially, if they're insecure, you were talking about reassuring them. For me, if I have an insecure dog, it's a lot about how I am. I change myself to be calm, and my personality, I consider, how am I? Am I nervous right now? Am I causing this dog to be nervous? Because we saw or heard from your story how intuitive and sensitive these dogs are to other people's emotions. We're their main person. They are extremely sensitive to what we are going through, and they're very observant, and they're very, whatever I'm carrying, they're going to carry. So as a young trainer, I had to work on those things in myself to make sure that I'm calm. And when I reassure my dogs, I don't fuss over them or pity them or, oh, you poor baby, you poor baby. No, it's very
right,
calm. Like you're a strong dog. I call him Braveheart. Like, come on, Braveheart, let's go. And I pat him on their chest, under their chin, to kind of give them that confidence. But I don't do a lot of touching. Like if I touch them, it's going to be on their chest, on their chin, under their chin, to kind of, it helps them feel stronger. But a lot of it is, all right, let's go. We're not going to worry about it. You're going to be with me. Everything's okay.
right,
And there's not a lot of fussing or talking, or it's just, the attitude of myself is just move forward, and they're not allowed to go run up to every dog that comes on their place. That's considered rudeness in the trained dog world, and also to other dogs. There's a time and a place. Hey, can my dog say hi to your dog? And you could do that from time to time, but your dog should not be habituated that they see a dog and they run up and sniff noses. Besides being rude, it's also, you could catch diseases if somebody else hasn't vaccinated their dog, or they have worms, or they have all that going on. And then running up to strange people. As humans, if I ran up to every person I saw and like kissed them on the face, that would be really weird. It's
yeah,
kind of the same thing. We have to get our dogs to learn, check out the situation, relax. You don't have to go running into every situation with an exuberance because you could get hurt. So I'm
right.
glad you brought that socialization up, but I'm always trying to throw in dog training on this, and
And
it's
I
it's
agree with
just
that 100%. And I tell people all the time, to me, socialization, like you said, is not them running up to every dog or person and wanting to play and jump on them.
mm-mm.
It's being able to be around them, to walk past them calmly without getting scared or aggressive and reacting in a negative way. And I do teach obedience classes. And, I'm always telling our clients, you know, I'm a firm believer that dogs read our body language and they feed off our energy. And so if we are scared, anxious, nervous, angry, whatever, they do pick up on that and they react to that. And so a lot of times what people claim to be bad behavior is just the dog feeding off us, reading our body language and our energy and responding to that.
Agreed, 100%. And oftentimes, people's misunderstanding of how to socialize their dogs creates really bad behavior habits in the future. Ideally, for me, when I'm going to like a dog trial or something and I have Copper or whoever with me, I really pretty much want them to ignore everybody around us. And he should be ignoring them, walking with me, totally calm, seeing everything, but totally ignoring everything, unless we stop and greet someone and he's allowed to go schmooze. He loves people and he loves to schmooze with people.
Right.
So I'll let him do that, but it's only with permission. And it's because not everybody likes dogs. Not everybody, well, at a trial, they usually do. But if you're out in the public somewhere, not everyone, some people are afraid of dogs.
Mhm.
You have to be responsible. And, oh, he doesn't hurt. He's fine. Well, you don't know if that other dog is fine or if that other person is fine. Just because your dog is quote unquote fine doesn't mean you can just let them run up on people. And that's like a basis for this therapy dog thing. You talked about the CGC a little bit. I want to go back and clarify it for people who may not know what that CGC is.
Okay.
It's the Canine Good Citizenship Test. It's offered through AKC, the American Kennel Club. It's offered in a lot of places.
Yes.
A lot of dog training organizations will offer this as a test. It's a title. So if you're interested in trying out some dog sports, this would be a really good way to start out. It requires basic obedience. They have to, I don't remember all of the exercises, but they have to walk past people. They have to stay for a certain amount of time. They have to come running to you through a crowd or come to you through a group around people.
Yes.
What else? They have to get
Yes.
allowed to be petted by somebody or touched by
Um,
a.
there has to be a supervised supervision for, I think it's 3 minutes. Allow a stranger to pet them. Be able to sit calmly in a group of other people and dogs while the handlers have a conversation without reacting to the other dogs or people. And yeah, be able to walk through a crowd, walk by various things such as wheelchairs and
Mhm.
walkers or people yelling, whatever, a variety of things that they can use during that test.
Yeah, I think it's a good indicator of the stability of a dog. You're not asking them to do
Yes.
anything other than what a normal dog should be able to do in life. And I think one of the harder things for an Aussie is the supervision, which means your dog has to be left with somebody on a leash and they have to stay there on a loose leash without having a bird while you walk away. And I don't remember if it's out of sight or not, but it's, that's hard for
Yes.
Aussies to do
Yes.
because they are so attached
Right.
to us. And sometimes we appreciate that attachment and we're like, oh, I really like that my dog's so attached to me, and I really you get some sort of ego from that, but it in actuality can be a hole in the dog's behavior. If a dog can't calmly sit with somebody that you trust them with, that's a problem. And so sometimes the things that we appreciate about our dogs, those of us who have dogs and have a different approach of looking at things, see that as a weakness. Like, hey, your dog is too attached to you. That's not a sign of a stable mind. You know, your dog being left with somebody else and behaving themselves and not being attached to you, because overly attached to you is not a bad thing. A lot of us create that separation anxiety and it somehow makes us feel better. Oh, my dog misses me so much. That must mean they love me. And that's not love, that's fear and
Right.
anxiety. So those
Right.
are some things to think about, guys, when you're looking at with your dogs.
You just never know what's going to happen in life. Sometimes, I mean, anything from taking them to the groomer or to the vet, or maybe you're out somewhere with your dog and something happens and you have to hand your dog off to somebody that you trust while you run and take care of whatever it is. And you need your dog to be able to stay calm for just a few minutes while you do that because you're not able to take them into that store or whatever to get what you need.
Hmm.
So yeah, being able to be with someone else that you trust is a very important.
Yeah, if I think about these kinds of random things. If I'm in a car accident, my dogs are crated when they ride in my vehicle 90% of the time. Sometimes
Right.
Copper gets to be the navigator, but most of the time they're crated because that's the safest way to transport a dog. And it's just like putting a kid in a car seat. That's the only safe way to transport a dog, in my opinion, and from other
Right.
research. So I use Impact Crate because it's not crash tested, but it's extremely strong. And then I have leashes. The only time my dogs ever wear collars is when they leave the house because I don't let them wear collars around the place because it's dangerous. I almost lost Copper because he got hung on a collar, and I fortunately got it before he got hurt. But when we leave the place, they have a collar, and I have a leash attached to the crate or next to the crate. Thinking about these things, what if you get in a car accident and you're not able to get your dog? Somebody has to be able to get that dog, or he could run out in traffic and be killed or lost, or a lot of these different things happen. So it's super important that they have these skills, just like crate training is a life skill. First of all, you should be transporting your dogs in a crate.
Right.
It's the safest way to transport them. But a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to put my dog in a little cage. And it's a life skill. What if there's a fire or a flood and you have to evacuate and you're in center, a home or somewhere where your dog can't just be running around. They have to be able to be calm in a crate. What if you have to transport them to the vet if they get hurt badly? You don't want them thrashing about in your car while you're transporting to the vet. Like, these things are life skills that are really good for these dogs to enrich their lives, to make their lives better. The more you train with them, the better their life is, because they get more experiences that make them comfortable and, enjoy your training. And you mentioned that, I'm going to transition to that time that you said it takes to train a dog. I find that, when I get a young dog or a puppy, I spend a lot of time with them. But then once we actually start training for something, whether it's tracking or stalk or rally or whatever it is, the more time I spend with them, that deeper that relationship gets. The closer we get, the
Right.
more that dog appreciates me, the more I appreciate that dog. And it enriches your experience with your dog so much. I can't even explain it to people how, even if you don't have any plans to show or trial, if you go to dog training classes, that time you spend to and from class, in class, it changes everything in a good way.
It does. It does. You become bonded with your dog. Your dog learns to better read your body language. You learn to better read your dog's body language to know when it may be nervous about something or hurting or sick or whatever the case may be. The more time you can spend training with your dog, the better bond you're going to have. And just the better, more confident, easy to live with your dog is going to become. I recommend anyone who gets a dog, get it into obedience classes as quickly as possible. Granted, provided that it's age appropriate and they've had their vaccines and so forth. But I
Hmm.
recommend obedience classes for anyone.
Oh yeah,
So, and a good structured environment like that can really help, again, to socialize your dog and help them be more comfortable going out in public and being around strange people and dogs and so forth. So,
hmm
yeah,
for sure. And it's harder sometimes. Like, dog training goes in different cycles. And I know the big thing now is the board and train, where these people, the trainers, charge a lot of money for taking your dog for a few weeks and then sending them back to you. That's not what we're talking about here. And that's appropriate for some situations. But if you've got a young dog, go to a reputable trainer, find a class, a group class that you can go to once a week, usually for 6 to 8 weeks, and they cover different things. And at the end, you'll have a test usually, and certificates and fun things. This is all very good for your dogs. Once they're, like you said, after 16 weeks, when they finally get their last shots, which is the rabies vaccination. And most places won't let you come to those classes. Just look around and
right,
find group dog
right.
training classes. It's not the thing right now. A lot of these trainers have moved away from it. So I think it's actually in some places a little harder to find. But I started out in 4-H, with 4-H doing dog training classes and having the dog project. And I was lucky, I got into a really good group of 4-H kids who had the dog project. And that's actually what got me into Aussies, believe it or not, was 4-H. That's a great place to start
Yeah.
too. So let's go back to talking more specifically about therapy dogs, because I'm sure you have some other good stories.
Okay.
And, talk about, like, maybe what are some other places you talked about going into this camp with, and it wasn't an ideal situation. They probably should have turned the music off. They should have turned the loud music off, but you have to have a dog that's going to be able to handle any of these scenarios. So, what are some of the other adventures that you've done and some other types of therapy?
We visit elementary schools quite a bit. We've done reading programs, and we've gone places, and a child will come up and ask if he can read to my dog,
Hmm.
and we'll sit down with a book and they'll read to him. And I've had teachers come up and say, this child is one of our most rambunctious active kids. This is the first time we've actually seen him sit down and want to read and be engaged in what he is reading and so forth. We go to universities at times around midterms and finals, just kind of let the students pet them and kind of decompress, I guess, from the stress of finals. One visit that kind of comes to mind, we were at a nursing home and rehabilitation facility. And I believe I had Bannock with me at the time. We were in the physical therapy room, and there was a lady who I am assuming had suffered a stroke. and the therapist was there kind of working with her and working her arms and legs and so forth. And her fingers were kind of curled up, so she couldn't straighten her hand out and pet the dog with the palm of her hand like you and I would.
Mm-hmm.
So we were sitting there and we were just, kind of chatting and so forth. And she's petting Bannock, I believe, with the back of her hand. And again, he doesn't do this a lot, but she's petting him with the back of her hand, and he just kind of looks up and starts licking her forearm as she's doing this. And while we're sitting there and just chatting, you just watch her fingers kind of uncurl and relax and start to straighten out. And eventually she just kind of turned her hand over and she started petting him just like you or I would. And the therapist, she's looking at me, and I didn't know if that was normal for this lady for what she had been through. And finally, the therapist said, I've been working with her for a few weeks now, and this is the first time I've seen her relax enough to actually straighten her fingers out and use her hands appropriately there. So that was rewarding. We go to libraries for reading programs. We're getting ready. Next month, we're going to be doing monthly visits to a veterans home that we have here in the area. I've got that scheduled. We're going to be going to them. I've recently, just yesterday, I got requests from 2 different elementary schools asking if we would come in and do some visits there, mainly for their special needs and behavior disorder classrooms to help them. And so I'm looking forward to doing that as well. So there's a lot of different situations we find ourselves being invited to during the COVID pandemic. Of course, that kind of shut things down quite a bit and limited what we can do. And a lot of hospitals to this day won't let us come into the patient's rooms, but we do go to the staff lounges and are there for the doctors and nurses and so forth, and kind of help them relax and decompress from everything they go through on a day-to-day basis. So
That's a good idea.
and these people are just always excited to see the dogs, and just take a few minutes and just sit down and pet a dog or hug a dog, or some people will even just kind of whisper into the dog's ears and just kind of tell them their problems. That just seems to help them get things off their chest and relax. So it's a good feeling to know that you can help people in some way there to enrich their lives or kind of relieve some of the stress they may be going through.
I think it's quite amazing. To me and you, we have dogs, and it doesn't seem like a special or unique thing to have a dog. They're
Right.
always there, and we get used to it. But not everybody has dogs, and not everybody understands how dogs can improve their lives and help them for just a minute. And you're taking and sharing that beauty of what your dog does with you and for you to somebody else. I think it takes a special person to be able to do that as well, because your dog is also helping, but you're also there. You're in that situation as well, and you talk to people and you can get to know people. And some of those people, especially in nursing homes, they don't see people other than the nurses every day. Their family doesn't
Right.
visit them there. So any little moment of that you can share with them, your time is one of the most valuable gifts you can give, because you can make more money, you can whatever, but you cannot give your time. Is your time, and it's done. Once you've given it, it's gone. And so I think that's a super valuable gift for people that are able to do that. And then also the work that you do with
Yeah.
your dog to prepare them for that. It's special. It's very, very special.
Oh, it is. And there's some of the situations you see, like the first one I mentioned at the camp, they can break your heart. But at the same time, you leave there happy because you were able to help that person maybe in a way that no one else was able to or had thought of, or whatever the case is. So it's heartbreaking, but it's very rewarding as well.
Having your heart broken is not a bad thing. A lot of people run from it and they're afraid of it, and they're afraid of that pain, but there is something beautiful about that type of pain where you're offering yourself to somebody. And we live in a world that goes so fast, and everything is
Right.
about me, chasing what I want and the me thing and making my life happier. And if I'm good, but there is such a beauty in giving of yourself and your time, even if it's once a month and that's all you can do, it will change you, it will
Right.
change your dog, and it changes the life of somebody else. We all have those moments. Hopefully, we all have
Right.
those moments and memories of somebody doing something for us that changed our life forever. And it sometimes can be something super small, like taking your dog to a nursing home or an elementary school for 30 minutes. I was a teacher for 15 years in elementary school, and I had some of those kids that just struggle. They struggle because they have ADHD. They struggle because they're on medication that makes them not always better. And their struggle for all these different reasons. Their home life is terrible. And, I didn't at the time take my dogs into school, but it makes a difference to have those kind of interactions in their lives. Some people have difficult lives and they suffer a lot. And by just relieving that suffering
Right.
for a short period of time, it's an amazing the gift that you can give them, but it also comes back on you. It always comes back to bless
Right.
you as well, right? Like you don't ever go back going, man, I wasted my time, right?
No, no, never done that. Never done that. Always come away from every visit we've ever done feeling rewarded for that experience, and thankful that I could be there and meet those individuals or help those individuals or whatever. Yeah, always feel rewarded after a therapy visit, regardless of where it's to. We mentioned the nursing homes, and some of those people are bedridden. They can't
Mm,
even get out of the room to see other residents that may be there as well. And so just going in, one of my dogs, Viper, she is really good about if someone is bedridden or just laying in their bed when we go visit, she will just walk over to the side of their bed and just literally lay her head up on their shoulder or their chest, just
mm.
very calmly. And you see this smile come on that person's face, and if they're able, they will pet her. And of course, she will stand there all day long if they're petting her. But it's just like she senses again. She just senses, okay, this person needs some comfort right now, and she will literally walk over to the side of their bed and put her head up on their chest or their shoulder or arm or whatever the case may be. And you just see them kind of smile and they relax. So dogs are very, very intuitive about people's needs and how they can help them.
They certainly can be, and
So,
I'll circle back like a like a dog on a bone. I'm going to circle back on dogs can be
okay.
very, very intuitive, but only if they are calm and centered themselves. Like if
Exactly.
they're in a frenetic, wild, jumping, hopping thing, first of all, they're not going to let you be a therapy dog, bring your therapy dog in, but they
Right.
also so to create that intuitiveness, that relationship, that ability to be observant, they have to be calm and they have to have a lot of experiences. The more experiences we have as humans, the easier it is for us to deal with anything that comes up. It's the same with the dogs. Giving them more experiences, getting them training, getting them to understand people. They can't do that when they're in that high adrenaline frenetic state. And the reason I keep bringing this high adrenaline state up is because Aussies like that. They get addicted to it if you allow them to be
Right.
that way. And any dog will get pushy and obnoxious if you let them be that way. But Aussies especially can get kind of sucked into that adrenaline thing. And it's super important that people that are listening that have Aussies, that you can identify that and start going, okay, we need to slow this down. We need to get this dog in a calm state of mind, because most dogs can get there. Most dogs can get there with training and time and experience. And then they get into that state where they can sense what other people are feeling and they can see the needs and feel the needs, because Aussies are super observant. And that is one of the reasons why I think
Yeah.
that we think that they're almost human, and sometimes we treat them like humans too much, because they're so observant and they're so connected to us that they put themselves in a situation where, like, oh, they can read my mind. Yes and no. But the calmer they are, the more trained they are, yes, then they can do those things because then they're in a right state of
Exactly.
mind and they can be
Exactly.
observant.
And they can read our energy. They can read the energy of the
Hmm.
people around them, and you know, and react appropriately to that.
Exactly. Exactly.
I agree.
Yeah, that is really cool. So
Yeah.
one of my passions is herding, as people know from this, or working stock. That is one of my
Yeah.
things. That you're kind of you do that as well, right? With your dogs?
Yes. Yeah, I do a little. I have trialed some. I don't trial a lot. I just personally, I enjoy getting out. I do have sheep here. I just get out. I enjoy getting out here at home and working my dogs and
Hmm.
training my dogs. You know, it just, that's kind of a release for me, something I enjoy, and I know the dogs enjoy it. And again, it helps us because we're out there working together. We become a team. It helps us to build that bond
Hmm.
together. And yeah, I currently, Bannock, who I mentioned was my first therapy dog, and I have since retired him because I have two younger dogs that I got certified. But you know, Bannock is a working dog, and one of my others, Viper, who is the mother to the pup you mentioned that your friend
Hmm.
owns now. She is
Hmm.
one of my therapy dogs, but she works. And my third dog, Raina, who is just been certified this past fall, we're kind of working with her on the herding. She's got a little bit of that instinct, but not quite as strong as I would like for it to be. But you know, she wants more of let's get out here and just chase
Oh yeah.
kind of situation. But when you get her in other situations with children or elderly, she is just a completely different dog, and does become very relaxed and intuitive to what people need at that time. So, you know, I have a lot of people say, well, how can you make a working dog, a herding dog, into a therapy dog? Wouldn't they be too energetic, too overstimulated, whatever the case is? And again, it's like you said, if you train them properly, no. If you teach them how to calm down, when to calm down, and be relaxed, you know, they know when to turn that on and off, and that energy level on and off. And so, you know, my working dogs, again, I think and I think because I do work them and give them that outlet for their energy and stimulate their
Hmm.
brain and so forth, I do think that helps make them more well-rounded and calmer
Yeah.
in those difficult situations, environments.
Yes, and the two are extremely related, and I'll draw that tie in because a well-trained working dog, and we say working dogs in the Aussie world, we mean herding dog. It's just in our world, we don't use the word
Right.
herding as much because we say working. However, outside of Australian Shepherds and herding people, working actually, a working dog is more of the protection, IPO, police dog thing. And so they get a little confused. But in our world, when we say working, we mean a herding dog. And so a well trained working dog, I think, could easily, if they have the right personality as far as towards people, a well-trained working dog could easily transition to a therapy dog because a well-trained working dog is calm. They start out crazy and prey drive, and that's normal, right? And so we just teach them to control their adrenaline, to manage themselves, and they learn to be very responsible because they're responsible for the safety of those animals. And I tell my students that come in with immature young dogs, I'm like, you will be surprised if you stick with this herding training, how mature your dogs will become and wise and calm because they're having to be responsible. They last night, we haven't had rain in forever here where I'm at, and I had my little goats, a couple of my little goats and a couple of my ewes with lambs in my little maternity ward out there, but it's not covered. And I went to bed last night at like 10 o'clock and I thought, oh shoot, it's supposed to rain sometime this week, I think. And so I looked at my phone and sure enough, it was supposed to rain in the middle of the night. And I was like, oh crud, it's dark already and I don't have lights out there. So I grabbed my flashlight and copper and I'm like, let's go. And he took those tiny little brand new newborn goats. I picked them up and moved them in myself because little goats, do not cooperate with dogs no matter what. It takes them a long, they're really annoying. They're cute, but they are annoying. So I pick up the little tiny goats, and I have Nigerians, so they're like the size of my palm. And he moved the mamas, which is not easy when they don't have their babies with them, into the barn. And then we went and got the ones that were in the maternity ward waiting to have babies and moved them into the barn. And then we went and got the ewes with the 3 lambs that are only less than a week old and moved them into the barn. And that is a lot of work and it's hard. But that dog had to be soft with the babies and then firm with the mamas that were running around being crazy. And, he was very calm. He knows where to be on the bubble to move them in with keeping them calm and everything being calm. A dog that can read little lambs, and that herding dogs are really good with this. And that's why I think they make exceptional therapy dogs, because you put them in with little lambs, they're gentle, they're soft, they don't hurt the babies. They understand. You can just see in their body and the way they move that they're treating them differently than the mamas and the other ones. And they have to learn to push the mamas at a certain rate or they're going to fight to protect their babies. And like there's all of these little things that people don't understand how complicated it is. And I will say that it's the most complicated dog sport or dog training activity you could do is herding, because there are so many variables. But that dog can go, and if he can read the bubble on the sheep, if he can read the bubble on the lambs, he can read people because he's in a calm state of mind.
Right.
He's not running around like a lunatic. He's thinking, he's communicating with these sheep and goats, that kind of stuff. It changes them. And then when they go, they can just read the energy. It's all energy. The energy of the sheep, the energy of people. It's all energy that they can read, and they're so good at. They're better than we are if we give them the experiences and opportunities to become better like that. So I think the transition between herding and therapy, unless you have a dog that just doesn't like people, they can still be a good herding dog. But if you've got the dog with the temperament, it really does make a difference. So you mentioned certification. What is involved in certification?
Well, it depends on the organization that you go through. And, I tell people all the time, first off, look around and see what's available in your area. There are some different organizations which will certify a therapy dog and provide you with liability insurance and so forth. I currently work with 2 different groups, Pet Partners and Alliance of Therapy Dogs. There's Therapy Dog International, there's Love on a Leash, different ones. And of course, they will have generally affiliates throughout the country. So see what is available in your area, who may be close by that can evaluate your dog, find out what the rules and regulations of that organization is, because some will require that you complete a certain number of visits within a given amount of time to keep your certification current. So, see what is out there, what's going to fit your needs and desires there. But generally, some organizations, in order to become certified, the person has to go through a handler class, as I mentioned earlier, where they teach you the rules and regulations. You role play various scenarios that you may find yourself in. And, for the most part, it's about being an advocate for your dog and making sure that your dog stays calm and not stressed out or scared or injured or whatever. And at the same time, you don't allow your dog to cause harm or whatever to the people that you're visiting. And then you will schedule a visit. I've done it in a controlled environment. And again, your dog needs to be able to walk on a loose leash. It needs to know basic obedience, such as sit, down, stay, come, those types of things. It needs to be able to walk around a variety of people. One of the stations I went to, the first one I did, it was actually in a horse barn. And I really don't know that Bannock had ever seen a horse prior to this. But we're walking down the aisleway of the barn, and the horses' heads were over the stall doors. They had a friendly dog there as one of the props. They had, people yelling at one station, arguing with each other, children, wheelchairs, things like that you may encounter out on visits. One of the evaluations I went to was downtown. and a lot of traffic, a lot of pedestrian traffic, car traffic. And again, they test you for the same thing. Is your dog able to stay calm and dependable in various environments and situations that could become stressful? And how do you, as the handler, address those situations with your dog? Are you able to calmly reassure them and keep them calm, or do you realize at what point you need to turn and walk away and maybe give the dog a break or address the situation or whatever? So like we said earlier, if you can do a CGC, a Canine Good Citizen test, or something similar to that, that's usually a good indicator of how your dog will perform in the therapy dog evaluation. But yeah, just being able to handle that stress in a calm manner. And I will throw this out there. As a breeder, I was introduced to this a few years ago, but I do early neurological stimulation with all my pups that I breed. And I think that helps. This was and I don't know if you're familiar with this or not, but this is a program that was developed by the military for their military
Yeah,
dogs to kind
the
of help
super
them
dog.
be able to handle stress and so forth. And I think that's been very helpful. I do that with them from the time they're 3 to 16 days old. And as soon as their eyes and ears start to open, then I have an app on my phone that I will play for them, traffic noise, different things, kids yelling and screaming, various things that they might encounter. I get them used to that at an early age while they're all still there with their litter mates and mom and everything in a calm, relaxed environment and so forth. I introduce them to different surface textures, um, get them used to walking on those types of things. So anything you can do from an early age as a breeder to help your pups be better able to handle stressful situations in the future is going to be a thing.
Yeah, the ENS stimulation is also called the Super Dog program. You guys can look that up too. It's it's interesting, and this is a sign of a good breeder, guys. And here's the choices. I'll kind of start to wrap this up a little bit, but the choices that you have when you're looking for an Aussie, you can rescue a dog. You can go to a dog that's in the backyard and you think it's very pitiful and you feel sorry for it and you can bring it home. And I'll tell you this, the odds of you having a smooth, easy experience are much lower. If you go to a good breeder who spends time with those puppies, they do the ENS or they super dog, they do personality testing, they get them on different surfaces, they potty train them early. There's a lot of different things you can talk to a breeder and find out, like, what do you do with your puppies? And if they can tell you expressly what they do and clearly what they do, it makes a huge impact. I'm telling you, it makes a huge impact. From experience, I've experienced rescuing dogs. I've experienced having puppies that were not badly treated, but just ignored. I mean, personally, I had an accidental litter one time, and it was an accident. It was litter I wanted to do, but not at that time because I had no time for puppies. And, I spent as much time as I could with those puppies, but it was limited because of my life situation. And they didn't get what they needed as much. I feel bad about that, but it happens. It does happen. But it makes a difference. Those dogs that I've gotten from breeders who spend all that time and also breed for specific characteristics as well, which is hugely important. When I'm looking at breeding dogs, it's about personality, it's about herding instinct, it's about health. There's all these different things. We spend hours and hours debating which cross we're going to make because this dog has these characteristics and this dog has these, right? You like beat your brains out going, oh, is this the right match? Because we care so much, we want to produce an amazing dog. Our goal is to produce an amazing dog. My dog Copper and I, everybody knows how attached I am to this dog and how much I think he is the perfect dog. I will spend the rest of my life trying to create a dog like that or better. Like that is my goal with the breed for making it better. It's not about the money because we don't make money typically much. We cover our expenses if we're lucky because it costs so much in money and time to produce a good litter of dogs with sound mind. And I met that dog that you sold to my friend, and She's named him Hondo now, and he's older. He's what, 8 months old or something like that.
9 to 10 months, I think.
Right. And he's in that age where
Yeah.
male dogs can get really silly and squirrely, and there's some basic biological stages they go through, and he's so solid and his mind is so good and strong, and he lets me work him, which is, a rare thing for Aussies to trust other people. I mean, I speak Aussie, but he's solid, and that is a testament to breeding and how well you care about what you're doing with your dogs. It makes a difference. I'm just telling you, you can fix some of those things in those dogs, but their foundation is so hard. It's so important, and it is hard to change it once you get into it. I encourage you, listeners who are listening. This was an amazing podcast. I really appreciate your time on this and your knowledge and expertise on this therapy dog program. Go find a group, because you mentioned some things that are super important. You don't want to do this on your own. You need to start off with a group that has experience, because a lot of places won't let you in unless you're with a group. The insurance thing is important because things happen. You're going to make new friends too. I bet you have new friends that you met in these classes and that you do things together, because you oftentimes will go as a group, right? 2 or 3 of you. You don't always go by
Yes.
yourself. So you're making new friends. You're making great contacts. Your dog's making new friends and having new experiences and blessing the lives of people who are suffering. And if any time, and our world is a better place, we can't personally alleviate suffering, but be the catalyst, be that person who just offers themselves and their time to other people. It is one of the best things that we can do, I think, in the world. I really appreciate your
I
time
agree.
and coming on the podcast.
Appreciate you having me.
Hey, and that's the show today. Thanks for joining me. I hope you really enjoyed it and got to learn something about this amazing breed, the Australian Shepherd. Join us on Facebook. We have a private group called the Instinctive Australian Shepherd. Join the group and join the conversation there. You can also find us online at theinstinctiveaussie.com. That's where you'll find all the show notes, the links to anything we talked about this show, and all of our past episodes. Subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever else you find your favorite podcasts, and that way you'll be the first ones to know as soon as an episode is uploaded. All right, everyone, I'll see you down the road.